Are you an undergraduate or postgraduate student? Do you work as an M&E consultant or you are a research practitioner? Do you find research methods such an abstract unit in the course of your study or in the course of your work? And this is because you cannot relate the research theory you learn or you learned in class with practice. Then this channel is for you. I, Dr. Lydia Wabogo, welcomes you to this channel, which is a class on research methods. In this class, we discuss everything social science research, from understanding the research discipline, research philosophy, elements of scientific research, and the methodologies of conducting research. Welcome to this channel as we explore this discipline called research. Welcome to our today's lesson, where we shall start discussing sampling in social science research. From lesson 21 to lesson 27, we have discussed validity and reliability in both quantitative and qualitative research. In the last lesson, we discussed reliability of qualitative findings, and we have clearly stated that it is important for researchers to incorporate more than one strategy when determining whether it is validity or reliability in qualitative research. In today's lesson, we shall introduce the concept of sampling in social science research. Note that the use of sampling is a strategic decision by the researchers to focus on some rather than all. And in our case, it is rather than all of the population of interest. This is premised on the fact that it is possible to produce credible results without the need to collect data from each and every member of the population. Sampling is a very wide topic. We shall therefore break it into three sections, where we shall introduce the concept of sampling. Then we look at quantitative sampling designs, and then finally we shall look at qualitative sampling designs. So our lesson today is introducing us to the concept of sampling, but in social science research. So we have three learning outcomes. One, we need to define the terms that are used in sampling. We need to discuss the purpose of sampling and also discuss the limitations of sampling. So let us move together as we look at the terms that are used in sampling. And this is because these terms will keep cropping up anytime you talk about sampling. So if you cannot differentiate between an element, a subject, a statistic, a parameter, a sample, sampling frame, etc., then it will be very difficult for you to understand the process of sampling. So now we shall look at the terminologies that we use in sampling. And the first one is population. Now, population refers to the entire group of people, events, or things of interest that the researcher wishes to investigate. Now, why does the researcher wish to investigate this group? It is because they have the characteristic that he or she wishes to study. Therefore, a population can also be defined as all people, and we are now just using people because we are social scientists who have the characteristics that the researcher wishes to study. Now, these people whom the researcher wishes to study are what we call a unit of analysis. And each individual in a population is called an element. Population is abbreviated as capital N. Now, do not confuse unit of analysis and unit of observation. A unit of analysis is the primary unit that will be the subject of statistical analysis. That is asking the question that the analysis of this research will be based on who or what. That is the unit of analysis, whereas the unit of observation is an object about which information is collected. So if you are collecting information from a community project, then that is your unit of observation. Population is composed of two groups. The first one is target population. A target population is any group of individuals that has one or more characteristics that are of interest to the researcher and to whom we intend to generalize our findings. Target population is also referred to as the study population. For instance, when conducting a study of undergraduate students in a particular course at the university, for instance, Bachelor of Arts, then all undergraduate students who are studying the Bachelor of Arts course makes the target population. Number two is accessible population. Accessible population is the portion of the population to which the researcher has reasonable access to. Now, this may be a subset of the target population. It may be limited to a region, to a state, to a city, a country, or institution. And note that this accessibility is not at the convenience of the researcher, but based on the problem. Therefore, even if all undergraduate students who are studying Bachelor of Arts makes our target population, our accessible population may be all undergraduate students who are studying the Bachelor of Arts program at the University of Nairobi. That means that we will leave out all Bachelor of Arts students who are in other universities. It is from the accessible population that a sample is drawn. And two, accessible population is representative of the target population. Those 2 points are key to remember, that we draw a sample from accessible population and we also ensure that accessible population is representative of the target population. Then we define sampling. Sampling is the process of selecting the right individuals, objects, or events from the study population. They can also be defined as the process of selecting a group of people to which we shall conduct our research study. These people who are selected are the subsets of the study population. And these subsets are what is referred to as a sample. Therefore, a sample is a subset of the population and they are chosen to be part of the study. Not all elements in the population will form a sample. A sample can be representative or it can be exploratory. A representative sample is a sample where characteristics of participants correspond to the larger population, and it allows the researcher to generalize the research findings about the study population. And this sample is chosen randomly, where every member has an equal chance of being selected, and it is associated with quantitative research. Exploratory sample is an information-rich sample that is mainly associated with qualitative research. This sample is used as a way of probing unexplored topics and as a route to the discovery of new ideas or theories. Now let us define what a sample size is. The sample size is the number of subjects who are used in a study, and it is abbreviated as N. Where do we draw the sample size from? The number to be used in the study is drawn once we have the sampling frame. Now, sampling frame refers to a list of all the elements in the population from which the sample is drawn. It is a list of all those within accessible target population who can be sampled. Using our example of Bachelor of Arts students at the University of Nairobi, it therefore means that a sampling frame will include all the students in the Bachelor of Arts course at the University of Nairobi. Maybe one may be asking, do we always need to have a sampling frame? And the answer is yes. A sampling frame ensures that everyone in the population is identified and that each person has an equal opportunity for being selected to be a subject. Note that a sample does not have to be taken from the whole target population unless the researcher has access to it. What are the characteristics of a good sampling frame? It should be relevant, meaning it should contain elements who are directly associated with the research and the phenomena under study. It should be complete, that means it should cover all relevant information. In our case, maybe it should contain the name of the student, his or her telephone number, his or her admission number, place of residence, etc., but of course based on the problem under study. Number 3, it should be precise where it excludes all irrelevant information. And finally, it should be up to date. That means it should be cleaned time and time again to ensure that only the elements who will be used in this particular research have their names in the list. If we look at this diagram, we are trying to relate population, sampling frame, and the sample. This population is the accessible target population. So from the population, then we list the sampling frame. You may be wondering, why do the elements in the sampling frame look fewer than in this population? The reason is because this population is target population. So from the target population, then we have accessible population, which we draw the sampling frame, and now from the sampling frame, we draw our sample. And you can see each and every individual in a sample is called a subject. We can also use this diagram. So we have a target population, which is a population of interest in which the researcher wants to generalize the findings. And then we are drawing a sampling frame which is coming from accessible target population. Note that the sampling frame is taken not from the entire target population, but from the accessible target population unless the researcher has access to the entire target population. And from now the sampling frame, we can draw the actual units who will take part in the study, and this is what we call a sample. So we move on with our terminologies that are used in sampling, and we have talked about an element, we have talked about a subject. An element is a single member of the population. So using the same example, each student in the Bachelor of Arts program at the University of Nairobi is an element. A subject is a single member of the sample. So if 100 students have been sampled from the Bachelor of Arts course or students at the University of Nairobi, so if these 100 formed the sample, then each student in that sample is called a subject. And as we conclude, we define randomization. Randomization means that each individual in the population has an equal opportunity to be selected for the sample. Then we define parameter and statistic. Parameter refers to a numerical value or measure of a characteristic of the population. For instance, mu means the mean of the population, and therefore mu is a parameter, whereas a statistic is the numerical value or a measure of a characteristic of the sample. So when we want to calculate the mean of the sample, we use X bar. We do not use mu. So mu is the parameter, whereas X bar is a statistic. Precision. Precision means the accuracy with which the population parameters have been estimated. Remember, we use the findings from the sample to make inferences regarding the population. Therefore, how accurate we are in determining the population parameters is what we call precision. Then finally, we look at response rate. Response rate refers to the percentage of people in the sample who have been selected for the study, but who actually participated in the study or in the research. Having looked at the terminologies and defined those terminologies, what are the purpose of sampling? There are 6 main reasons why we conduct sampling instead of conducting a census. And these are: 1, it is economic. We use fewer resources when we are sampling than when we use the whole population. The other factor is timeliness. A sample provides the needed information quickly because it is accessible. Number 3, the size of the population. A big size of the population makes it physically impossible to conduct a census, and therefore a sample becomes adequate for such kind of population. Number 4, inaccessibility of some of the population. There are some populations that are difficult to access, so that only a small number, which is now a sample, can be used. For instance, with the prisoners or people living with mental illness, etc., it may be difficult to get each and every person in that category, and therefore a sample will be convenient. Number 5, destructiveness of the observation. Here we are saying where a study results may result in the destruction of an object, then a sample would be appropriate so that you do not end up destroying the whole population. And then finally is accuracy. Surprisingly, a sample is more accurate than a census. And we now look at the limitations of sampling. We have 3 limitations of sampling. The first one is sampling error. Now, have you ever asked yourself that the part of the population that has not been taken as a sample may give you slightly different findings? And of course, the answer is yes. Those who have been left out may give you slightly different results than the ones that you have actually used in the study, even if they are coming from the same population, because you are dealing with people who have different attitudes, different knowledge, different perception. And because of that, sampling always brings with it a level of uncertainty. It is therefore the responsibility of the researcher to ensure that the findings from the group that he has taken to study are correct and within the acceptable margins of error, as we discussed in lesson 20. Another limitation is sample bias. This would be brought about if the sampling frame does not have the characteristics that we have discussed in this lesson. When the sampling frame is not precise, it is not adequate, it is not up to date, you are likely to have a sample that is biased. And then finally is unavailability of sampling frames. Finding a good and complete sampling frame as we would want in a research at times may be a challenge. And with that, we have come to the end of today's lesson. Today, we have introduced the topic on sampling. We have started by discussing the 12 concepts that are used in sampling. We have discussed the purposes of sampling and the limitations of sampling. In our next lesson, we are going to discuss the sampling process and the methods of determining the sample size. So until our next lesson, I thank you for being part of this class. Feel free to ask any question regarding today's lesson. Feel free to comment, to like and share this video with your friends. And do not forget to subscribe to this channel so that you can attend to more lessons like we had today. So till our next lesson on the sampling process and determination of sample size, bye for now.